maybe it's nice if you don't mind to put on your camera so that we really have a face-to-face experience. Yeah, thanks. Who wants to start?
I can go first.
Okay.
That's all right. So in my group, we were all from different studies, most of which actually did diary studies or are doing diary studies, but also within different time frames. So I, for example, I'm doing it like every week, but there are also other people that do it a couple of times a day, sending out the questionnaires, which comes with different kinds of issues, also for finding participants, which was one of our main topics. So we were talking about how to recruit new people, but according to the study design, this is sometimes easier and sometimes more difficult. Since if you're, for example, looking for leaders and you have a high time-consuming questionnaire density, it's a lot harder to find participants that will actually have the time to fill them out in comparison to other studies where you have less consuming questionnaire intervals, and yeah, people are more, or it's easier for people to participate in the study then. So this is what we generally talked about. Then we also slightly talked about how long the data collection should be, or the participant recruiting, to collect different amounts of data and see how effective this will be in the end, or how easy it will be to analyze all of this. But I think in general, everyone is on a good track. And yeah, everyone seems to be on top of their stuff.
Yeah, that sounds good. So it's good to hear you could exchange some ideas maybe on how to handle that. Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot. Who wants to go next?
Well, I can. So in my group, we were actually only 4 in total, and 3 of us were also doing diary studies, which one of them is about like dark personalities at work, which was like last minute diary study, and they also already started data collection. So it was nice to have some insight from someone already starting data collection with Qualtrics, especially for me, since we're also going to be doing Qualtrics. And yeah, well, we talked about that there's quite some difficulty with like recruiting of participants and keeping them. And then, well, we also talked, one of the other studies was about emotion regulation. And so those are all daily diary studies, and I'm reading about like snacking at work and like the stress influence on it. And then there was also a study about mindfulness, which is also done via Qualtrics, but like a one-time study. So it was interesting to see the differences in between the diary studies and the one-time study. But yeah, I guess that was the quick overview of what we talked about.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes I know, that's Annika's study. That's data study. No, but I think it's maybe you also, you know who else is doing, maybe not from your own research group, but from another one. Maybe you can also stay in touch and exchange some ideas if you think it can be helpful. Yeah. Thanks. Who wants to go next?
So in our group, it was 3 different diary studies and 1 experiment. So we had a bit of a difference there. We were all at different stages. So some had to develop an entirely new questionnaire, basically. So they're getting to the point where they're about to start with recruiting participants, and others have been recruiting for quite some time now already. So like stages are very different, and of course, accordingly, also the challenges that the teams face are very different, or have faced already. Basically, for the people further into it, it was challenging to find participants. And even though already having tried a lot of different things with addressing people personally and all of those things, but it was still quite a challenge. And other people had a bit of trouble with, just the creation of the questionnaire, for example, was quite a big task, and it was said like maybe it would be nice to have this presentation earlier for those people, so to have a bit of a guidance for that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, in the past, we had this presentation or this session in January. But then we realized when we go into data analysis, students didn't see they didn't have the urge yet to learn this, so they didn't really see a lot of point in it. So we moved it back so that people really know, okay, I have to understand how to do this with SPSS. But I understand maybe this part, we could move that a bit forward again. Yeah, I will take that. Yeah, but I hope everybody was still somehow hopeful and they knew how to, even though it was challenging, still knowing what to do. Yeah, and otherwise, really ask your supervisors there. They are there for you. Yeah, and with the data collection, I think everybody knows it's really, we know it's a challenge to recruit people, to have them fill out questionnaires, but we also know that in the end it will work. But it is a constant, you have to be resilient. You always have to try again, get in personal contact. And also I advise to keep the questionnaires open as long as possible. So you can keep them open until June, because tomorrow and after tomorrow, we will show you how to prepare the data analysis with the SPSS syntax. So basically you write an analysis program in SPSS, and you can start doing that in May or June while the data collection is still going on. So it's not that you have to wait until the data is in, until you can analyze, but you can actually already prepare everything, try it out with a subsample, maybe with the 30 people you have. You prepare everything, you just wait. And then at the end, when you close it at the end of June, you don't lose a lot of time with the data analysis because the syntax, the programming is already done. So that would be my advice. Okay, who wants to go next?
I can go. So our group was pretty. Sorry about my camera, by the way. It's not working on this laptop.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. So that's Pilar, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So our group was pretty various. We had the one cross-sectional study, one daily diary, one longitudinal, and then we had an interview study, which is nice. The interview study is about learning and adaptation, and it's gonna include 60 people, which I believe is pretty difficult to do, especially when each interview is 45 minutes. The longitudinal one is going to be weekly, I think, and it's going to be done in dyads, which is also interesting in terms of data analysis. I'm not sure how this is done. Also, for the cross-sectional, it's going to be about meaningful work and burnout, and the new measurement will be developed for this study. And lastly, the study is about the daily diary is about adaptive behavior and recovery with work-family conflict. So it's going to be a daily diary, I think, every day for about a week, assessing these variables mostly. So yeah, basically the hurdles, if you want, the mostly are about the finding 60 people for the interview is pretty difficult, and the cross-sectional study is being conducted alone, one person only, so that's also pretty challenging. And yeah, that's mostly it.
Okay, good. Thanks, Pilar. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I can next. So we had 3 daily diary studies. One was about the dark triad, the other one about interruption and mindfulness at work. And I'm doing emotional regulation at work. And we also had one interview study, which sounded very time consuming and difficult. And I think that would also be already the first challenge, a very time-consuming process and also very new. And in regard to the daily diary study, which study was it? I think it was the dark triad one. Yeah, they already quite a high drop rate. Which I think was quite helpful. And
Mara, we are kind of losing you, I think. Or is it only me?
No, it's also me. Yeah, I hear parts of it.
No.
So we've stopped hearing you when you started describing issues of Alexandra and her study.
Yeah, so there was a high dropout rate, but they don't really know why. They said maybe because of the Easter break and of vacations, but they weren't really sure. And yeah, I think then we also just exchanged a couple of ideas about recruitment in general, which I think was quite helpful. And also all of us also said that it would be helpful to have the presentation earlier.
First it was too early, now it's a bit too late. No, I will take that, and well, yeah, probably maybe only 3 weeks earlier, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I think it's good that you exchanged some ideas. And I think with the Easter break, you might have a point there. And actually, but I think that's also good news, because it means that if they start recruiting or keep recruiting now, it might be better. But we a little bit have that, because a lot of people will start recruiting, I think now in April or end of April. And then we have a lot of these bridge holidays. So we will have this every year. That's our time scheme for the master thesis. So a little bit we will also see this with the recruitment starting now, that there are some bridge days. But then the good news is that even, like, say you collect data for 10 days, if you then have 8 or 7 days, that's still fine. So maybe with the bridge days you lose a couple of days, but doesn't mean that you use the participants entirely.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, who wants to go next?
I can. So we had 3 people with diary studies, and I'm doing an experimental study. Mostly it seemed like we were all kind of waiting to start the data collection. Everything is kind of in line, just rectifying the last little bits of making sure the translations are okay, and Qualtrics are, the setup on Qualtrics is all okay. For example, I did a pilot study to make sure that the script was okay for my study, and I think everybody else is doing a similar stuff. So that's kind of where we're at right now, just holding on to waiting a little bit before we actually start with data collection.
Mm-hmm. So it's an online experiment, I assume.
For me, yes, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at team dynamics, so it's all like on